episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises and delivers on bringing you the very best guests in all of true crime, night in and night out. It is a fitting way to start the Friday. We were having audio issues. It is a week that has felt like 7 months. Our Fisher-Price equipment continues to exceed all expectations. COE, is there a reason that I'm out of focus? Hang on, everybody. COE, I'm bringing you in here. Is there a reason that I'm going in and out of focus now, on top of the fact that the voiceover guy says my name incorrectly for my own show? But do you know of any reason I'd be going in and out of focus, COE?
Hold on. Hi, I'm on the phone with Space Ghost. Yeah, if you can just stand up and with your index finger tap the top of the camera, it'll do a quick soft autofocus and you'll be fine.
It's still going in and out. Anyway, I just
production in action. Production in action here.
I wanted everybody to feel a part of my pain. Scott Duffy, I usually start with Fil Waters, but it's going to be the Phil show today. How's your week been, Scott? Hopefully better than mine.
It's been a great week. Hello, gentlemen. I missed you last week. It was great. It's good to see you guys. Now you're muted.
Now I'm getting a phone call and my screen is freaking out. Maybe we should not do the show today. I don't know, but it's Fil Waters. How are you? I had a guy on my show 2 nights ago named Brian Weiss, W-I-C-E, an appellate attorney out of Houston. I said, hey, do you know my friend Fil Waters? He paused and he said, Fil Waters is an absolute legend in Houston. I said, oh, he's a friend of mine. You know this guy, right? He's a character, this guy, Brian Weiss.
Yeah, that's very, very kind of Brian. Very kind.
Yeah. Before we go any further, let me just tell you, among the many difficult things to bear this week, there was a laundry list, was the fact, oh, thank you, Ned Smith. I don't look blurry. I don't know if you guys have heard, Scott or Phil, but the temperature here did drop below 70. I do not have my mink coat. I gave it away. Scott Duffy, wondering if you have any advice for me moving forward. They're saying they're expecting a seasonably cooler winter than other winters. Any advice from me? It is about 68, 69 degrees right now, and it's quite difficult to manage. And any ideas, Scott?
Well, think of the cold regions and you'll immediately feel warmer. We've had, I'm not sure if it was our first snow, but we did have snow today. It was nice to see.
Really?
Yeah.
Snow? I heard that there might be a storm rumbling through the great Northeast. Is this true?
Yeah, like there are different parts, I think, of like upper parts of Pennsylvania, New York. I know New Jersey got some. So we just had a good snow squall. It was nice to see.
Amazing.
It's cold.
If I never see a snow squall again, I'll be ecstatic. I'm going in and out of focus again. Voiceover guy mispronounces my name. I don't know what else to do about any of this. 56 in Louisiana. That seems cold. Fil Waters, how is the weather there? Probably on par, probably a little worse than the Big Island. But any advice to me to try to stay warm once it dips below 70?
Well, I think if you quit whining that the hot air that will not be expended will be retained and therefore should warm you internally from the inside out.
Interesting. There we go. Well, listen, guys, we're in for a treat today. I don't know why we haven't done this sooner, but I just had this glorious idea. We've got America's most respected detective, I think he has what's your clearance rate? 96%, Fil Waters?
Clearance rate, 96%. Yeah.
That's what is an average like? I think I read that the Detroit PD had like under a 30% clearance rate. What is an average clearance rate for an average detective, which you are not?
I wouldn't have any idea. I know that we in homicide, that for many years we maintained a 80% or better clearance rate, and I think the national average was around 58. I think something like that. A lot of the big cities, Chicago, I think their clearance rates, gosh, it's maybe under 20%. I mean, it's pretty abysmal, and it all goes to and they've got hardworking people there, but certain conditions in those cities prevent those detectives from doing their jobs, and it's not good. So we were very fortunate in Houston that had a great homicide division, a great department, and a community that was very supportive. So,
periodically, I'm going to have to raise my hand. It's the only way to get me back in focus. COE, all kidding aside, we need to figure this out with Space Coast. I got to get a guy who says my name right for my own show. Mary Binney, I've been to Edinburgh. It is stunningly beautiful. It's -7 there. I believe that's probably Celsius. So that's very chill. Scott Duffy, have you ever been to Edinburgh?
No. Where is it?
Scotland, baby.
Oh, Scott, beautiful.
Yeah, would you like to go? Like if
I'll
Mary,
go. Are we going to have a show there?
Yeah, like if Mary Binney sent you, round trip, all of us round trip tickets, would you go and do a show there potentially?
I think it would be. It's an awesome idea.
Edinburgh's a great place.
Yeah, have you been?
I have been there. I've been there. Yeah, walked into the castle. It's really cool. You got statue of William Wallace on one side and a statue of Robert the Bruce on the other. And do you know that William Wallace never set foot inside that castle?
Scott, I don't even know what Phil's talking about. I'm not a history buff, but I love the fact.
Braveheart. You don't know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
oh my God.
Oh, okay. All right.
The great historian that you are, Joel. So no, it's a great place, and for Scott, you would be interested in they have a kind of a whole museum that's full of military and law enforcement type stuff. They have a tomb of the unknown soldier in there as well, and their a banner across it is the patron saint for law enforcement is Saint Michael, and I'm sure you knew that, being the good Catholic that you are. And the phrasing that we have on our banners, our morning banners, Lecite Nemo Impune, I think is Latin, but it's on the top of the arch when you walk into that part of that museum, and it's pretty cool. So I didn't know that, but I will not be sailed with impunity is what it stands for, and so it was kind of a cool deal to see that kind of common connection there. But and I've got quite a bit of Scottish in me, so it was really a cool place. Plus, the Dewar's Distillery is really a neat place, and I don't even like Scotch, but it was really cool.
That's awesome. Mish just invited us all to Cape Town, so we'll do a global STS tour. This is after the Super Bowl halftime show. Whew. By the way, Phil reminds me a lot of the COE's dad. Space Coast will attest to this. He is a history buff, so anytime you go anywhere, he's like, right, Joel, the conquistadors were here in 1796, right? And I'm like, yeah. It's kind of like whatever, but he likes to teach people. I should have led with this as breaking news. Had Fred and Ethel were at the doctor today. I'm happy to report they both have clean bills of health. They did try to draw blood from Ethel. She was not having it, so she's going to have to go back on a sedative. She was kicking like a mule. Fred, I should have given him a Hannibal Lecter mask. He did not have it. And then I took my eye off him for 1 second, and he tried to attack a dog 47 times his size. I was told I am like really not sure what to do. Let me just spill all my concerns and worries. Do I get Fred neutered or not? Scott Duffy, I'll go to you first on that. They said this was a disturbing story I'm about to tell you, Scott, for everyone. If you're, I don't know, this is a story that is not going to be for the faint-hearted, but the vet is awesome. Shout out to Dr. Newman. She told me that if Fred is not neutered, by the way, this is a true crime podcast. We're getting to it. Trust me. And it's going to be a special day today. But the vet told me if you do not get Fred neutered and he happens to be in the dog park with it's neutered, correct. And he happens to be in the dog park with a non-spayed female, he will go absolutely crazy. And she went on to tell me that she's got a brother-sister patient, and the brother knocked up the sister recently. They just don't care. There's no concerns for dogs. They just have animal instincts. So he literally knocked up his own sister. Tough to swallow that pill. But Scott Duffy, should I or should I not get Fred neutered?
I guess it all depends what you're planning on doing with Fred. Are you going to raise puppies and, send them?
No,
okay,
definitely not. Yeah,
get it done.
But I hear if they're neutered, then they like there's higher instances of cancer. They get fatter. Testosterone's a good drug. They don't. Fil Waters, what do you say about all that? You're shaking your head.
Well, just the fact that we're going to emasculate a male is a painful thing to think about. But, we've all of our dogs neutered, spayed. I mean,
did you neuter your dogs, Phil? I would not take you for a guy that would neuter his dogs.
I would probably not do it. I know we've I can't think of, I'm trying to think of how many. I think most of the dogs that we've had have been female, and we've spayed them. But it's something about I can't think of any. Now we've had horses that we've had gelded, which is essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it. I don't know that I've ever done it, and I don't know if I was faced with it. Unless there was some reason to do it other than just to do it, I'm not sure I would. Maybe it's because I know how they would feel. I don't think I would. I wouldn't let anybody near me. Yeah. Like I've said before,
no one's neutering
the boys with a knife, so that ain't gonna happen.
People know better than to neuter Fil Waters. No one ever do that. Look at Ned Smith. It's not emasculation. Mish in South Africa said that I should have had a bris.
Well, speak for yourself, buddy.
Yeah. Mish, that was a good advice. I should do that. Joel, listen to Ned. From Ned, Joel, listen to Ned. Ned, you have to convince me. I don't know. I think I heard like the alpha male Joe Rogan crew like 2 years ago saying how bad it is to neuter a male dog. So it's coming from those alpha males over there. Anyway, let's get on to some true crime. This is going to be a special show, mainly because I don't know any of the clips that the COE has pulled. But I had this idea. We've got America's most respected detective with his crazy clearance rate. Let's watch him in action. Fil Waters, before we get to you, let's go to you. This is a case from 2012. I believe her name is Michelle Warner. She is murdered by her then boyfriend, a guy, Michael Castellanos. So kind of set this up, and then we're going to watch Phil interview. I want to say interrogate, but Phil does not like that word. But we'll watch Phil interview the suspect who was eventually convicted. So, Phil Waters, set this up for us. What was going on in 2012? How'd you finally come to this guy?
Well, this started out as a missing person case. Assigned to missing persons, we get a phone call from one of the detectives in missing persons, and he believes that it is going to end up being a homicide. And so they asked my partner and I at the time to kind of parallel the investigation. They were going to let us know what they were doing. The woman, Michelle Warner, gets reported stolen by her family, who had to come in from East Texas. They hadn't heard from her, and she had just started a new job in a law firm, and she suddenly just goes radio silent. And they came over and talked to Mark Castellano, who was her, at the time, was the father of her child. They were no longer in a romantic relationship, but they had a 3-year-old little boy named Caden. And she had fallen on some hard times relative to where she had been before. And he offered to let her move into his apartment with their son. And that's where it started. So she moves in. Things are they're not getting along. And even with the son being there, and then at some point in time, he gets in an argument with her, and suddenly she, according to him, leaves and doesn't take her car. And she has apparently done this before. She had a problem with substance abuse. And so his story sounded like it was something that could occur. But the family wasn't buying it. Of course, the family shows up and they start going to the media. And we start, again, we're not really involved in the investigation, but we do go to the apartment. He has now taken, this is all happening over a course of a couple of days. He's now taken the son, the boy, and driven to Odessa, Texas, which is about 8 hours away. And he's put the son there, and then he's come back to Houston, and then he goes back to Odessa. So in the midst of all this, the media picks it up. It gets some nationwide coverage. And I get a phone call from a missing person supervisor who says that they've received a call that somebody has walked into the Odessa PD office and is admitting to committing a murder in Houston. So it kind of only makes sense that it's going to be this guy. So I call Odessa PD and talk to them, and that is not what happened. Evidently, there were neighbors of his parents that had seen him and the boy at the parents' house, and they called in to say that they're over here, and the PD sent a unit out to check the welfare of the boy and talk to Castellano, and that was it. So there was nothing, no admissions, anything like that. At that point in time, that was on a Thursday. This had all started getting cranked up earlier in the week, like on a Monday or Tuesday. And I just decided then to make a phone call to Castellano directly, because he had already committed to the missing persons detective to return to Houston for an interview. And it was apparent then to me that this was going to turn into a homicide investigation. So I went ahead and called him on that Thursday night. He was very willing to speak with me, and I asked him if he would return to Houston. I said, I knew you already set up to talk to the detective and missing persons. Would you mind coming back and speaking with me? And he said, oh, no, that's fine. I'll do that. So he's very cooperative. And then before we get off the phone, he says to me, are you, could I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, sure. So he said, do you think I ought to let Dr. Fil interview me?
Which he did.
And I kind of went, Dr. Fil. And I said to him, I said, you talking about the bald-headed guy with the, 70s porn star mustache guy on television? And he says, yeah. He goes, yeah, he called me. He wants to interview me. He's going to come to Odessa and interview me. And this is going to happen like tomorrow, like Friday, the next day, or Saturday. So I said, sure. Because my thinking is that Dr. Fil is a forensic psychologist. I'll call him, get a hold of him after he does this interview. And in order to prepare for mine, I'll get what he gets from Castellano, and that'll give me a better feeling for the guy that I'm going to be talking to. Yeah. Because preparation is very important in an interview.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating, but he did end up going on Dr. Fil. I just wanted to break in for one moment. Scott Duffy does not know this yet, but first of all, I also asked Scott, just so you all know, because I know people are going to say, why am I leaving Scott out? Scott, I asked him to get us an interview, but it's harder to get on the Fed side, I think. But if Scott can, we will. But Scott, you're officially the co-host today, so I want you jumping in with questions. More importantly, once we get to the interrogation interview, I want you to critique. I want constructive criticism, even if it hurts sensitive Phil's feelings. I want you to crush him with anything that you feel he did wrong in the interview. But to Uncle Phil's point, and maybe the COE will pull up a quick clip, is this a gift to Fil Waters that this guy's going on Dr. Fil as a potential suspect prior to Phil interviewing him? Is that a gift to Phil?
Well, of course, the show didn't air till the next week.
Yeah, that was for Scott.
Oh, sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Scott, is that a gift?
Yeah, of course it would be a gift. Anytime you could get anybody to talk about what you're about to talk about and get all the background, the lies, whatever else is going to be said. So of course it's, but as I'm learning this real time, it's not like he was going on live, right, Phil? So that's.
And he said it was, it aired a week later. Anyway, without further ado, someone said I should have watched Phil doing the interview, but guess what? Scott Duffy, Phil, I'm going to play. This is the actual interview of the legend, Fil Waters, doing what he does best. We'll let it play. Phil and or Scott, dive in whenever you want. These are long clips. Do you remember how long you interviewed him for? We're never going to get through it all, by the way.
Well, it was 2 hours and 40 minutes, but
not going to happen today.
The end of the setup is that Sunday he called me on Saturday and said he was not going to be able to drive back to Houston because he's got diabetes and it had settled in his foot. He'd already done like an 18-hour round trip extravaganza thing going on here. And he asked me if he could fly in. And I said, sure. So we picked him up at the airport, and he asked me if he could bring his brother. Yes, bring your brother. Bring the whole freaking family. I don't care. So, and this is a non-custodial interview, by the way. We don't have any evidence. We don't have any body. We don't have any witnesses. We have nothing except a note that he left in the apartment. But that apartment, we went in and looked at it, and it's like he never lived there. It's all her stuff. So this is a pure confession case. And he showed up on Sunday just like he said he would. We took him right down to the homicide division, put him in an interview room, and this is a non-custodial interview. So he can leave anytime he wants. He's not under arrest. He's not in custody.
Wow. By the way, Vesper Martini is like a true crime savant. She knows everything. She says the best part of the interrogation is about 10 minutes. COE, can you get with Vesper? Because I don't know where those 10 minutes are. And if she can direct you, because I know you guys speak offline, maybe we can eventually get to those 10 minutes. I'd like to see those 10 minutes. Scott Duffy, before we get to the actual interview, I have a public service announcement and a question. Have you had a colonoscopy, Scott Duffy? I know it's a personal question, and I'm asking you in a public forum. Have you had one?
I have not.
You better go get one, Scott Duffy. You're a year older than me. I want you to do it this week. I had one this week, came back clean as a whistle. Very easy thing to spot. Scott Duffy, I'm going to get on your ass about this. Fil Waters, have you had a colonoscopy?
I think I've had 5 of them.
Very good.
Or maybe 4 of them, 3 of them. I started getting them when I was 50. And I got the 3 years when I had a couple polyps. Then I got the 5 years when it was clean. I'm right now on a 5-year cycle. So
yeah,
that's
about right.
Yeah,
Scott,
men our age need to get those things.
Scott Duffy, you better make an appointment this week. It's a gastroenterologist. I'm going to be up your you know what. Will you get one, Scott? Are you afraid? A lot of these alpha male law enforcement guys are afraid. Are you afraid, Scott?
Not afraid. So I'm a regular visitor to my 2 doctors, and
we're putting Scott on the spot here. But listen, you got to tell your doctor, hey, give me a prescription.
This is kind of turned into a public service announcement about neutering dogs and men 50 and above getting colonoscopy. So
that's what we do here on Fridays. But let me tell you, I still can't remember his last name. You can Google it easily. But I used to work with Katie Couric's husband, and he died of colon cancer. And then she went on this whole thing about, I mean, it's such a simple thing. If you just get it, look at Ned Smith echoing us. But yeah, it's important to get, Scott. I'm going to get on your ass about it. I'll tell you a really long story in 10 seconds, and I promise we'll get to the interview. By the way, the reason I brought it up was selfishly. This never happened to me, but I've got like a little like tenderness. And if Carm's listening to this right now, she's going crazy. She's like, shut up, Joanne. Blah, 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 blah. But I have this like little tenderness on my lower left side, which is apparently where your colon is. And I'm just wondering if I'm slowly bleeding out from internal bleeding. If I'm not here, that's why. Let me tell you a quick story, Scott Duffy, very quickly, because this comes back to you in a weird way. I had a photographer at Fox 5 News. I'll just use his first name, Rich M. Rich M's a great guy. When I first got there, I see him, and he's kind of bitching and whining about how he was mowing his lawn and he was exhausted and all this. And he was about 50 at the time. And I said, hey, have you gotten like a physical? He's like, I'm terrified of doctors. I said, call my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law's a cardiologist. I said, call my brother-in-law. Never calls my brother-in-law. Fast forward about 3 years. I'm out by the Meadowlands on a story. I was no longer really working in New Jersey, and Rich M covered New Jersey. So I just happened to bump into him. Kind of a secret, but a lot of the Fox 5 photographers on the other side of the Hudson, they would hang out at this local bar during the day when nothing was going on. Come at me, Fox. Anyway, long story short, I fast forward 3 years, and I bump into Rich, and he looks horrible. He's like sweating, sitting at a bar. I'm like, Rich, did you ever call my brother-in-law? No. I'm like, dude, you're not looking well. Call my brother. He calls my brother-in-law. He gets in. He had to have quintuple bypass surgery. He was going to go to Jamaica The following day, my brother-in-law said 1,000% he would have come back in a pine box. To this day, he calls me once a year. Every single photographer, you know, they're all like middle-aged, overweight guys. Every single one of them was calling me or coming up to me on the street saying, "Hey, I need to go see your brother-in-law." So business was good for a while, but that is my cautionary tale. Jay Monahan, that's it. This is Katie's husband, but that is my cautionary tale. Scott, I'm really sorry for calling you out publicly about your colon, but I'm looking out for your best health. So please get the colonoscopy. Now, without further ado, and Scott Duffy, please jump in here when you see something that Phil is doing wrong. This is Fil Waters, America's most respected detective, perhaps the most famous detective ever to live, interviewing a guy named Mark Castellano, a suspect in a murder. Let's watch together.
The first thing, you're not under arrest.
Right.
You're not in custody. You're
Right.
free to leave. So just want to make sure
Right.
we're clear on that. Again, I appreciate you coming in and
Yes, sir.
because it's, you know, the whole point
Right.
of all of this is to find Michelle.
Right. Yes, sir. Hopefully.
Okay. Here's if you'll just keep
Right.
your chair, just keep your chair turned.
Okay.
Like we had it there.
Okay.
Okay. I'll come to you with this
Okay.
stuff. I can imagine that you are probably getting tired of telling this story over and over and over again. But I would kind of like to start, I don't, the purpose is not to sit here and do some epic
Right.
historical,
No, whatever y'all feels best.
but I want to go back to the time when you first met Michelle,
okay.
because I know there's a lot of history there.
Right.
And then we'll kind of walk it up to what occurred last Saturday, and
Okay.
then kind of go from there. Is that
That's
okay?
fair.
So I've got kind of a time frame of when you all met, but if you'll just when you met Michelle and kind of the dynamics of how you all got together and
Okay.
kind of a, you know, Reader's Digest for
Right. We met at work. My company bought her company out, and it gets pretty bad for a great while. The pill demand, work. I was starting to notice that I'm changing. You know, she's having me do a lot of things. Hey, we have an extra computer. Take one from the company. I need one for my brother, or hey, I need you to get me something like this.
So she's basically asking you to steal now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And of course I do it.
Okay.
I did it.
Well, you're invested in this relationship,
right.
I get
She
that.
pretty much at this point owns me.
Yeah. And this is what year now? We in
They're
09
in
yet?
09.
Okay.
I'm going to just stop it right there and go to Scott Duffy, not Fil Waters. Scott, up to this point, I mean, we're seeing sensitive Phil, making sure the guy knows it's non-custodial. He's free to leave anytime. But you did see a moment there where he shifted his chair and Phil was having none of it. Put him right back in his place, literally and figuratively. What do you make of it so far?
Yeah, no, I think it's everything that Phil has preached and taught about. So he is following what I'm sure has been given to him beforehand by his mentors. So I like the fact that he's extremely calm, inviting, professional, polite. But at the same time, not forgetting who's in control. Phil established he's in control and did it in a way where the guy was helping him put his chair back. So I enjoyed that. It's a very enjoyable first. This is the initial, right? This is right off the bat. There's nothing beforehand. Yeah. So this. I enjoy seeing the fact that as Phil has told us in the past about the table should be off, out of anybody's view, and allow this guy with his back up against the wall. I can see the classic fidgety and the arms closed, but Phil is doing a great job trying to get rid of some of that anxiety that exists just by being in a police room, regardless of innocence or guilt. Just by the fact you're in a police room can be very anxiety building.
Yeah. I'm going to let Phil hop in, and then I'm going to let it play for a while. Again, COE, I don't know if you're here or not. I know you're here in spirit, but I would be interested in those 10 minutes that Vesper's talking about. Did Uncle Phil read him his Miranda rights before the interview? If it's non-custodial, Phil, what do you do about that? And do me a favor. By the way, Vesper says you have aged like a fine wine. Look at this. Now I feel bad that I was up Scott's you-know-what about getting his you-know-what, but I'm going to talk to Scott after this. Phil is aged like a fine wine. Fil Waters, I just forgot what I was going to ask you. He's sitting there with his arms crossed. You're very soft-spoken here. Tell us about the importance of this setup. I already saw him do like a butt scoot, which you've talked, an ass wipe, I think you call it. Just set up the room here, like what you're about to do, and then we're going to watch it.
Well, he's in a chair with no wheels. I'm in a chair with wheels. Gives me the ability to move around the room and forces him to sit there against the wall. And that is, there's a purpose behind it. It's to make him feel uncomfortable to the degree that his body language is really going to shine. Because when you're sitting in that where you don't have a lot of mobility, then your body is going to start to react to the questions that I'm asking, the way I'm asking them. And the body can't control these things. Now you can get a pathological liar in there that is maybe more able to do that, but there are other attributes of a pathological liar that you can pick up on that will give you the same signals. So the starting out this conversation, and this is a legal requirement, is to let him know he's not under arrest, he's not in custody, and he's free to leave. And I appreciated him coming voluntarily to speak with me. So that takes the aspect of a custodial setting right out, throws that right out the window, and Miranda is not required in this setting. And I never delve right into the discussion about the case. I want to find out about the person, establish that relationship with them, and start to lower their anxiety level and get them comfortable in trusting me. So,
what about this, Phil? Isn't there usually two detectives in a room? You appear to be solo. Is this because of your legendary status?
Well, I've done two-man. My partner, we used to do two-man interviews, and then we would make a decision about who will be the lead, and then that's when you get into changing out and that kind of a thing. In this particular case, we decided between us that because I had called him and spoken with him, that at least the rapport aspect of this had already been established. So it was going to be better for me to go in and bring about the relationship than it was for somebody he'd never spoken to, my partner, to walk in there and start this process all over again. So that was when you go into these interviews, you have a strategy that you're going to enter them with. And then along the way, you make tactical decisions throughout the interview. This was a tactical decision on our part to conduct a one-man interview, and I would be the lead in that interview.
Look at this. He's up for parole in 2026 already. He only got 27 years. We're going to watch this now. And Scott, also, you just jump in if there's something you want to ask or want me to stop. I want to play this out. Someone said, was there a development in this case, Michelle Warner? The development is we've got the detective who's sitting in that chair, sitting in his chair in Houston, watching it with us. That is the development. Here we go. What was that?
some of the things about the living conditions, and then she was asking for not only more pills, but also take more stuff for work. And that was right before she started working. Like, I mean, a week is when I had my suicide attempt.
Okay.
And I don't want to forget that, but that was in there. I couldn't take it. I felt so guilty. I didn't know or not.
I mean, I hate you to revisit all that, but what just in a what brought you to that?
Because I was a lying sack of
place.
crap. That I was lying to everybody. I was
Lying about what?
just, I mean, stealing, getting pills. I mean, I've never done this before in my life. I'm not gonna, she, every once in a while she get pissed off, and she when she gets mad, she's violent.
Okay.
I don't care what anybody says she is. If she,
Okay.
Scott will testify to that. She'll hit you. She thinks she has the right to. The way she'll sit there and tell you the way she's raised, and a man has to take up crap. She's a pretty girl, and she gets everything she wants. She has a princess attitude.
Wow.
Well,
now the pushing and all that, is this happening while she's pregnant?
yeah, she starts hitting on me, and I basically hold her down.
Okay.
Because I don't know what else to do.
I mean, we're like
On a bed.
putting her down. I mean, how do you
Grabs
control
me,
her? I guess.
I'd grab, like she starts hitting me, her chest would be up to me, and I grab her around her back and hold, like, on the side or on my back. Most of the time I would hold her on top of me.
Kind of in a bear hug.
Because she's in there beating the crap out of me, and I didn't know what else to do.
Just before we get to clip 3, I mean, Scott Duffy, I would assume that this is a dream. This guy's got what I call diarrhea of the mouth. He can't stop. He's just talking. You heard that he tried to unalive himself, which I did not know. And he said he was, I guess feeling guilt or something is what he said. But Scott, what about this? He's just going on and on and on and on.
Yep, this is great for us. This is great. And Phil's, I love the fact that he's letting the guy talk, because it's sometimes we cannot hold back ourselves, and you want to get to another part of the story or this or that. But Phil has tremendous patience here, and the guy's talking, and his body now is perfectly situated for that closed off. He folded his legs, and so he's now talking. And I imagine this is his way of saying, "Hey, I can tell about things that I shouldn't tell you, the officer, about the drugs and about the abuseful relationship." I mean, this is very difficult, but I can see early on he's planting the seed that I love the way he said the princess. I thought that was pretty interesting, where I could see this going.
Yeah. Fil Waters, what are you thinking right about now? Ned Smith says he knows Phil knows. Do you think he does know that you're onto him here?
Well, I'm reading him and letting him, the two rules in that room is to be patient and to listen. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So that we can hear twice as much as we say. So it's important for him to be able to tell his story, because what he's going to get around to is that he's the victim in this thing. And then he's going to bring in the little boy into it. And when I start to pick up on that, then it's clear at that point I'm going to get through to him by being empathetic to his talking about his son. And so I don't know if that's going to be in one of these clips, but at that point in time is where I share, and this is important too in the interview room, you got to share a little bit of yourself. And don't make crap up. I mean, share a little bit of yourself, and that gives them more information to allow them to open up more to you. So that's what's going to end up happening as we go on through the interview.
All right, we're gonna keep watching this, and you're watching world famous, world expert, America's most respected detective, Fil Waters. Go ahead, Phil.
Let me say one thing real quick. I just saw somebody flash up there about how Dr. Phil took the confession. Dr. Phil did not take the confession. Dr. Phil interviewed him, and he continued to deny in the interview. So, although months later, Dr. Phil did take credit for the confession, but he did not take it.
But did he ultimately confess to you?
Well,
we're going to see it here. All right. I hope we see it. I don't know where the hell it is. Obviously, toward the end, I would assume. But let's keep watching this for now. COE, I'm going to need your help here to find the money 10 minutes of this. But and I'm assuming that's where it happens. And I know Vesper is working on it with you. Here we go.
After the suicide attempt, and that's where everything is kind of crashed down upon you.
Right.
And after it's over with, you recover from it physically recover from
Right.
it. What is the atmosphere now between you and Michelle? What's the relationship now?
She, at this point, just, telling me, you're lucky that I saved your life. You're lucky that I called the ambulance. I'm still thinking whether or not you get to be in the delivery room. I'm not going to put down that you're the father unless you do what I would do. I mean, at this point, she tightened her noose around my neck pretty good.
So she's not sympathetic or empathetic to what has happened?
At the hospital in front of everybody, she is.
But in private?
In private, she's,
sending you the message that...
Yeah, you screwed up, buddy. You should have died.
And what is at that point in time, what's your...
Well,
what is your attitude or feeling toward her?
It's... she still tells me she loves me and she's doing this for my own good, and
through all of this,
she tells me that, and this is the messed up part. And she told me this last month while she told me that me and my family were the sack of crap.
Mm-hmm.
That she's like, I still love you. I'm not gonna be. We're not romantically involved or whatever, but she's like, I still think you could be a really good dad and all this stuff. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, I take care of myself.
Are you? I know there's a fine line between love and hate, but at this point. Are you still in love with her, and you just don't like her, or how is that kind of manifesting?
I tolerate her. I don't love her. I'm not in love with her. I mean, I don't want anything to happen. I wish Michelle would pop up right now and go, hey, I need here.
Okay, but we get back. So the sense I have is that after the suicide attempt, instead of trying to encourage you or build you back up, that she's going to tear you down a little further to make sure you understand where your place is in this deal.
Right.
If I got that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Or call it friend.
So at what point does this finally...
She and I get into a big argument one time. It's getting really bad. I'm holding her down. I end up... And then she hits me to the point that I lose it. I grab her by her neck. And then I get her on the ground. I let go. It scared me because, I was really mad. I got it.
Scott Duffy, I mean, this guy, I'm no detective, I'm no FBI agent, but not that it's a confession, but right now we're hearing him in his own words saying he grabbed her, lost his cool, started choking her. If you're the investigator here, do you just continue to listen?
Yeah, well, I love the fact that, typically anytime I know it goes both ways, but more so for a male to lay a hand on a woman, even if it's acceptable, is against our societal norms. And so thereby, in an age of domestic violence, when he's admitting things here, and Phil is just, there's no judgment. It is just pulling it out. I noticed two things that that he said, which I can see the buildup of him. Ultimately, the first thing was she put that noose around my neck, and which I just love the fact, because he is laying the groundwork to this buildup of what's the end result going to be, and everybody should be on my side. But then there was something else he said I wish you would pop up right now. That's a, in the sense that where's she going to pop up from? As opposed to, I wish you would come into this room and say. So the fact that he is saying these things is pretty interesting to hear as this goes forward. He's laying the groundwork, and Phil, I just love watching. Of course, I love watching Phil, the master at just pulling this. He's not even having to pull it. He is giving it up. And the fact that he can say these things, he's watching Phil as well as he would watch. The fact that he is sowing seeds of, yes, she did this to me, I retaliated against her. And the fact that Phil's showing zero judgment is doing a good job to allow him to keep talking and to feel like, hey, I'm here mano a mano, which is very good.
Phil, someone was asking at this point where he's talking about choking her and like being afraid of himself for doing that. Is she pregnant at this point, or do they have a child already?
I don't think so. The little boy was 3. There was one point in time where he attempted suicide after the boy was born, because he didn't think he would be a capable father. It was a lot of stuff crashing on top of him, and she had done some things. She was manipulating him. I mean, look, Michelle's beautiful. This guy's a Casper milquetoast, kind of a dumpy looking dude. And I think he was as mesmerized with the fact that somebody like Michelle was paying any attention to him, period. And the reason why was because at that point in time in her life, she was really caught up in drugs and drug abuse. And he was a IT guy at I want to say a pharmaceutical company, and had access to a variety of different narcotics and drugs. And she would get him to steal those things for her. So, but when he talks about he's telling me why he did what he did. And he's making these admissions to me. When he talked about choking her, I knew then that that's how he killed her. The minute he told me that, I went, okay. So we had gone to the apartment at one point, and we had gone back a second time because to search it, really give it a thorough search. We checked the AC returns. I mean, people have put bodies all sorts of places. So we went back. We were standing in the apartment was set up where you had the main bedroom, which had a door that went out to the staircase that went down into the parking lot. Then you had another bedroom to the left of the main bedroom, and then you had a bathroom to the right, and then it went straight down a short hallway, and then you had the living room on the right and the kitchen on the left, and it was all open. So it wasn't a big apartment, but we went into the bedroom, and the bed was sitting against the wall, and there was a closet across from the bed. And my partner, this is a true story, by the way, my partner opened the door to the closet, and I was standing by the bed, at the head of the bed, and the minute he opened the closet door, I said to him, "This is where it happened." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Whatever happened, it happened right here." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'm just telling you, this is where it happened. It happened right in here." Now, we'll later find out where it happened. And I was right. So the sense that I got at that moment in time is where it happened and what he did. So there were some real seminal moments in this investigation that were pretty incredible. So there was some stuff, not because of me. I'm just telling you that there were things that happened in this investigation that led us to the truth and led us to some measure of justice and some peace for the family.
Yeah. Nan here, I want to leave this comment up, but Phil did not flinch with the unaliving statement or the choking, which is interesting. So Phil did not there was no tell there from him, like, oh my God. Phil, what's the deal with the walls? Are the walls in there to make your subconscious uncomfortable? They look like studio recording walls.
That's what they are. That's just for sound. That's just for acoustics. It has no other purpose. The ones that we had in there were a dark gray. And so it was like sitting in a dungeon. It was just weird looking. So we decided to do the opposite and keep the thing lit up. And by putting these types of pads in there.
All right, let's keep watching here. It's fascinating.
Now, walk me through what happens there.
We're arguing about money. And,
okay. Now this is in the apartment, or
this is in the apartment on the top floor, and I'm sure the neighbors love it.
In a different apartment?
No, same one.
The one you're in?
No, this was in Windrock.
Windrock still, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we got into a really, really bad fight. I'm gonna call the cops. This, that. I said, go ahead. We're both. I said, I told her one time, I said, sleeping in jail would be better than sleeping next to you or downstairs on the couch at this point. Okay. And I started talking to my family. I'm calling my family, crying all the time. My dad, and finally my buddy Anthony Glass that lives in Lubbock said, I'm gonna go get you a bus ticket. Get all your crap and get on the bus. Go home.
Well, what happens where you had this fight where you grab her by the neck?
It's just retaliation from her, just coming in. And, when she gets pissed off, first thing she does is start throwing a punch. She'll just walk up to you and just hit, throwing a punch, just because she's like, that's her right.
And
by the way, that was the worst thrown punch I've ever seen.
And your response was what? I mean,
I pushed her back pretty hard, and that's when she threw that ashtray at me. That's why I grabbed her.
Okay. And how did you grab her by the neck?
I just like that. Okay. I just lunged towards her. Okay. Tackled her, and then I got up. She's like, I can't breathe. Then I got off. I was like,
so you got her to the ground,
right?
And you got her to the ground by.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of fell together. It was like she's over there.
Right.
And then when she said, I can't breathe, I put my hands up and I got up, and of course she follows me, and I just, I got downstairs and I just sat on the couch and I just told her, I said, call the cops. I said, I was ready. I said, I'm tired of this. Call them, please.
I want to keep playing it for time purposes.
Being a father myself of a son, that your love for Caden, of course, is getting bigger.
Right.
But whatever love you had for Michelle is probably now.
Well, every time she sucks up to me and she tells me, well, I still love you and we can, be happy and all that stuff, I want to believe her so bad.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you still,
you
still have a love for her.
Deep down in my heart, I still love Michelle in a way that.
You want it to work.
I want us to get along. I don't think that I don't love her in the way that I want to be with her, but I love her in a way that I want to get along with her so that Caden doesn't feel the animosity. Well,
so that Caden's world isn't constantly threatened by factors that you can't control.
Right, and because I kind of see.
Let's get to last Saturday, the 22nd.
Okay.
Because I think we've pretty much, unless there's anything you can think of historically that we need to know, I think we've pretty much covered. We kind of got a flavor for your relationship and how it's been this very. This is just my impression, is that when it's good, it's like intensely good. But when it is bad, it is intensely bad. Yeah. There's really not a whole lot of middle ground here.
No, sir, there's not.
So at this point in time, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to, and I'm not trying to be Dr. Phil here.
Right.
But I am trying to get a feel for the dynamics going on. At this point in time, your relationship with Michelle is the arrangement is only because of Caden and the responsibility you feel for him, the love you feel for him, and the need to protect him, and take care of him. Okay. So, but we still have these moments of hostility, and Michelle is kind of reverting back to what she's kind of always done with you,
Right.
trying to manipulate you, control you, and using kind of sounds like whatever she knows how to
She does
pull
a good
the
job
strings, and she's working on you the same way that she's apparently always done.
Right.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Because leading up to there, I mean, to avoid fights, I'm staying at work all night, sleeping at work.
Okay.
There's even one time I went and slept in my truck.
Okay.
I've always avoided her. That's the thing is like, well, why don't you call her? I don't want to talk to her because we fight.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's human nature. I mean, I certainly, if I had somebody out there that, I don't have I don't like Vietnamese food, so why would I ever go into a Vietnamese restaurant, right? So, so I get that. I get that.
She sat there and got in his face one time, and she's on here like this. I get on my knees, and he's sitting there and shaking his little hand, and she's sitting there grabbing him, and don't you ever, and you're going to turn out to be a sorry piece of crap like your dad, you sorry mother little. And at that point, I came over to her and I pushed her like that. She didn't. She caught herself, and I said, "Get up! Don't do that anymore."
Okay. And she takes what with her?
She has her purse and everything normal.
But doesn't take the car.
She doesn't take the car, and I don't know she doesn't take the car until I look outside and I see the car still parked there.
Did you find that odd?
I found that extremely odd. And at this point, I'm pissed off, and I'm just trying to think. I was thinking, where can I go? Because at this point, Caden is just, I can tell he's, been screamed at. You can tell he's been crying. When she leaves and I came over and I get him, and of course, he wraps himself around me.
What time do you think it is that she leaves?
I guess she left around just a little bit after 7.
Okay.
I don't know, 7:05, 7:08. I mean, this happened really fast. I mean, it was just a lightning storm. Just, and it was gone. I mean, it was just insane. And I get back in. Yeah, I get back into the apartment around midnight. And, I park the car, and I go upstairs, and I can tell somebody's been there. She had stuff on the cabinet, like there's a sink, from her room.
Okay.
There was like a bag there. It was gone. I remember that bag when I left.
Okay.
And it was gone. Everything else, I really couldn't tell if it had been touched. It was still kind of so.
Have you called her? Have you tried to call her?
At this point, no. I don't want to call her. Have I or have I? No, I didn't want to call her because I didn't want to let her know.
She hasn't.
I'm thinking at this point she's still doing whatever.
So she hasn't tried to communicate with you either. Okay.
No, that is the thing is I'm trying to do this way before she gets back because I know that what she's going to cause now.
And what is this thing you're trying to do?
Just get our stuff out because, I know it's going to be a court battle. I know it's going to be,
because now you've clearly made some decisions
about Caden and,
which are
that he's not being taken care of. I can't do it by myself. And I feel as his dad that if I continue doing this, then I'm neglecting him and I'm just as guilty as she is.
Right.
I'm going to stop it real quick. I want to get through this. But Scott Duffy, I think I know I have ADHD, so it's hard for me to stay focused on a conversation, but Phil is obviously not taking notes. This guy's telling kind of a long, convoluted story. How do you make sure as an investigator during an interview that you are following the story properly to ask the right follow-up questions?
Great question. So there are a couple of different things, but what I'm watching Phil do is the paraphrasing, and he'll say things, and then Phil will kind of in a few words recap what has been said, and then allowing him to either change or affirm. So when you're doing that, you are putting it into your head. Okay, I know where this is going, and Phil is allowing this guy and everything he's saying to kind of while paying attention, but then also devise the next question. So it's because it's very tense. You have this guy. Phil knows he did it, right? And and so it's very important to keep that patience, because this guy's just talking and he's talking and talking, and more so the way I enjoyed the way this guy would say, "I choked her," but he's over here. And then Phil's very good at saying, so you choked her. And so it's amazing to see how his body can't say or show what he's doing. So that's why he's stuck here. I choked her. And then Phil, letting him see the fact that I see where this is going. It's very interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Phil, quickly, because I want to get to this, but did you know at this point for sure that this was your guy?
Oh yeah, at this point, yeah. I forget how far it is into this, but it's important for me. And the other thing in the room, time is always on the side of the interviewer, because the only person other than the detective that can shut down that interview is the person you're talking to. And my philosophy has always been, and this is what I teach, if they're willing to sit in that room and talk with you, then you need to sit in that room and talk with them and listen to them. And this interview went on for 2 hours and 40 minutes now. And of course, it's all incorporated with the confession and then the demonstration and so forth and so on. But my point here is that you have got to allow them the time to solidify the relationship that you have already established with them, and let them get comfortable in the relationship. So I'm listening to what he's saying, and I listen to how he says it, and then go back, and I want to verify things. I want to make sure that I want him to affirm what I have heard. And he does that. And of course, I'm watching this again now. I'm watching, when he starts to say things that he feels a little uncomfortable saying, his hand goes to his mouth.
Interesting. Very interesting.
He's trying to, he knows he's saying something here that's maybe a little damaging, and he's kind of, he wanting to cover that up a little bit. And then you see his legs. I mean, there's several times where the legs are doing this. And then he wanted to demonstrate for me. It was important for him to demonstrate what he says she was doing to their son. So he gets out of that chair, and again, this is the purpose of having that chair with no wheels. In order for him to do that, he can't just rock around the room. He's got to get out of that chair, down on his knees, to demonstrate what he wants me to see. And he wants me to see this. He wants me in the same situation that he is explaining he was in.
Phil, someone watching on a monitor in another room?
What's that?
Is someone watching this interview? Are they monitoring it in another room, other detectives?
Not that I'm aware of. No, why?
Someone asked the question. I'm curious. But look at this, Miss Brazy, Fil Waters, Houston PD finest. I missed your masterful detective work. We're watching Phil in action, lest you think we are not the future here at STS. It is 5:16 Saturday morning in Australia. This is Fil Waters interviewing a suspect in a murder. What's going on here? Why can't I hit play? COE, what's going on here? What? Oh,
I think I told you that on her desk at work, there was some sort of child custody papers.
Well, so there you go.
We're gonna go there, and I don't know that it was for Caden.
Right.
Can't imagine it being for for Haley.
Right.
So I can only presume.
I would presume.
I mean,
it
we'll
was
take a
right.
look at him and see.
I would
but,
say it's for Caden too, because she's threatened to change his name, take him away from me, my family.
And this is all. Her purpose is to keep you under further control.
Right.
So she's basically using Caden as a pawn.
Right.
To get what she wants, and unfortunately, up to this point in time, you've always been the source of being able to get what she wants.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me ask you, as I know we've been in here a while, and it's just, I'm sure you understand it is part of what we have to do.
Right.
I don't have obviously any dog in the fight. And again, I've told you, I certainly appreciate you coming here and talking to us.
I want Michelle to be found.
Spending a lot of time here. I can tell you, Mark, that I very much appreciate and understand your feelings about your son.
Right.
I have a son. He's
Right.
27 years old now. I was about your age when he was about 3.
Wow.
So I get it.
Right.
That little story you told about him reaching out and when he was born, went through the same thing. I know that the impact it had on me is that, I looked at my son and I'm like, the love that I felt for him was so strong that it caused me physical pain. And I would just watching you talk about Caden and that experience, especially when he was born, I'm almost of the opinion that you may have experienced.
Well, like I said, I almost passed out.
Kind of the same, right?
I mean, it just.
And it ain't, believe me, it ain't from being weak.
Right.
All right. It's all about strength, and it's the strength of that love. That's what sometimes it just.
Right.
It consumes all the air in the room. What happened in the apartment last Saturday between you and Michelle, that unfortunately Caden was a witness to, whether it was what he saw
Right.
or what he heard, is my impression. It's my impression that what that was about, what that argument was about, what that confrontation was about last weekend, it wasn't about you wanting to hurt Michelle. It was about your love for Caden, and it was about your burden.
Right. Yeah.
About protecting Caden.
Right, because he wasn't being taken care of.
Exactly.
I wasn't taking care of him, taking him to work for 10 hours a day or longer.
Exactly. It's about love. It's about your love for Caden.
Right.
It's not about your dislike, or if we can use a strong word, if we're going to use a strong word like love, what has become a kind of hate for Michelle. That's not what it's about. It's not about hurting her.
Exactly.
It's about protecting Caden. I'm telling you what, my heart goes out to you, man, because what you have put up with for 3 years of your little boy's life, and then to be separated from him, knowing this had to tear your guts out, knowing what was going on over there. And then when you bring him back, and unfortunately, Michelle's part of the mix, and that's the only way you can get Caden back. And I'll be completely upfront with you, Mark. Michelle didn't walk away from that apartment Saturday. She did not do it. There is no indication that she walked away from the apartment.
Well, she
So
off.
listen to me.
Okay.
Listen to me. What happened in that apartment was driven by your love for Caden, not a desire to hurt Michelle. But I'm going to tell you something. Sitting here talking to you and listening to you talk about Caden, there is no doubt in my mind that you, like I, would do anything to keep a threat from occurring with your son. And I'm going to tell you that your first impression with me is that you are a man of your word. That is clearly displayed because you've taken care of Caden under the most egregious circumstances that I could ever imagine. When I tell you that you're a better man than I for putting up with that, I mean it. I'm telling you, I could not. I'm listening to your story, man, and I almost want to cry for you. I mean, I just can't imagine the stress and the pressure put on you because of the love you have for Caden when you watch this woman continually berate him and treat him so terribly because she's doing the same thing to you. I need you to explain to me what happened. We both know. Michelle did not walk out of that apartment. She did not walk out of that apartment. We both know it. We both know the circumstances under which whatever did happen, happened. I need you to tell me. I need you to get it off your chest because if you continue to keep it, it will fester. It will eat away at you like a cancer. It'll eat away at you like that diabetes is eating away at you in your foot. It's going to be something that's going to be in your system that until you explain what happened, and then we can go from there. So I want you to be honest with me and tell me what happened.
She got up, and I got up, and she's getting dressed, and she's finishing up, and she's still yelling, and Caden's hiding. I grabbed her and I broke her neck.
Okay.
And I just threw her down and got Caden to call my parents. And then when I came back, I just got rid of her.
Where did you get rid of her?
She's in Midland.
Okay. Do you know where? Would you be willing to take us there?
Yes.
Because
look, I can't live with this anymore either, man.
I know.
I feel dead inside already.
Let me tell you something, Mark. Number one,
I don't have anything else. I didn't have anything else to do.
look at me, my friend. Look at me.
I'm sorry. Fucking give me the death penalty. That's fine.
Look,
I deserve it.
Mark. Look, I'm proud of you.
My life is over with anyway.
Your life's not over with, Mark. Mark. Listen to me, man. Listen
I
to me.
lied to everybody. I didn't want to do it.
Listen to me. Listen to me. Your life is not over. And you know why?
Why?
You've got Caden.
I'll never see him
No,
again.
you will. You will.
Don't kill me in prison.
No. Listen to me. Listen to me, Mark. Look, here's what I want you to focus on. I want you to know this, and I want you to look me in the eye. I'm proud of you. It takes a real man to stand in here, sit in this room, and talk with me, and talk about something that he's done that is so egregiously wrong. Let me tell you, it does. I've had people that have sat in this room. They know that I know the truth. And they are not man enough. They were man enough to go and do what they did. They're not man enough to take responsibility. And you have done that. It takes a real man to take responsibility of what he's done.
I'm here in Houston, and I just confessed to killing Michelle, and I wanted you to know that she's dead. Tired of what she was doing to me and Caden, I grabbed her by the neck, and before I knew it, broke her neck or choked her or whatever, and her tongue was sticking out, and that was it. There was no going back.
Yeah, she's up against the edge of the bed. Her feet are hanging down.
Like here?
And I'm like this.
Okay, all right, but before that, so I go if she goes
Yeah.
like this,
Mhm.
and then what do?
I push her and then grab her and then
Okay, you
fall
try-
down
you-
and fall.
I know you're not going to do it because I got my brother Phil here to help me
Yeah.
out. All right.
And then I sit there
And then what did she do? When did you realize?
her tongue stuck out.
You said you heard
I heard this.
Okay.
Well, when she fell down, I heard that, and then her tongue stuck out, and I just was
Knew that wasn't good.
Knew that wasn't good. I made sure and covered everything up. He didn't see anything at all. He was. So, and my parents are still the best option for him to live in. Not her family, because they placated her drug use all the way up until now. And I'm sorry. I really feel like because that little boy looks just like me, if they got around him, they would take out stuff on him because of what I've done. And that's how I really feel.
How he's eating there, I will never understand. Scott Duffy, far and away, I think the best police interview I've ever seen, and I really hadn't seen it till just now. I thought the most compelling, amazing, ingenious part was when he kind of flipped the script and said it wasn't hate, it was your love for your son. I think that really it just gave me the chills. It really opened it up for him, to feel like he wasn't this horrible human being, to feel like he could trust Phil. Pretty amazing technique right there.
Yeah, I mean it is textbook, and not just words on paper. You are seeing how a good interviewer really does show compassion, empathy, building that rapport and that trust. I enjoyed watching that moment, and this is important for anyone who hasn't been in law enforcement, hasn't interviewed, and hasn't been the subject of an interview, police interview, to watch that moment. So first and foremost, it's important. Phil knows, the interviewer knows, that that person is the murderer. And so you have to believe that. It's not a fishing expedition. And so this was why Phil knows exactly where he's going with this, knows exactly at the point to say, now I have to address the elephant in the room. And when Phil said, we both know she did not walk out of there, Phil is putting himself in that room as a witness. And this guy believes it. Oh my gosh, you were watching me the whole time. Phil, and an interview is able to say emphatically, like, this is it. It's not like, are you sure? No, Phil knows. The interview was able to execute and convincingly say to the guy, we both know it. You just need to say it. When Phil said that, when Phil said, we both know she did not walk out, you saw zero defense. The guy was, no. It was, and the guy, you could just watch the tension leave. I thought it was excellent. Phil had that piece of information, was able to execute it. I think he was waiting for that moment with the diabetes in the foot. It's just like the diabetes in the foot. It was, and the guy's looking at his foot like, yeah, so it's that's the important, when you decide as the interviewer, I'm here now to say, now what did you do with her or to her and so forth? To not get any more resistance. That guy had made the decision. I'm telling you, and he's also saying, thank you for listening. So we call this, and Bert, tell me, it's the rationalize, project, minimize. And I liked how Phil's showing the guy, it's not this hate for her, it's this love for Caden. And so thereby you did something, shouldn't have done it, but you did it for him. And that gave this guy the way out to say, yep, I did it for him. So let's get to it. It was just remarkable.
Yeah, amazing. Phil, was there a trial or did he plead? That's number one. But number two, did you know you were going to do that ahead of the interview? Did you know you were going to say it was just love for your son, not your hate for this woman? Did you know you were going to use that?
Well, yes, that is the Reed School teaches that as I believe they call it a negative alternative question or a statement. And I call it, when I teach it, I call it good choice, bad choice. So what I'm telling him is, and that was the short version, that part there where I'm really emphasizing that point is about 12 minutes long. But I am telling him, and this is the way I teach it, and you got to make that statement first. Look, this wasn't about hurting Michelle. This was about taking care of Kate. I mean, Mark, this was about taking care of Kate, and it wasn't about hurting Michelle. And I noticed that when I was doing that through that period, he is nodding his head. So he is affirming what I'm saying to him. And he knows that this is the good choice, bad choice. The bad choice was this to hurt Michelle? No. The good choice was it was to protect Kate. So you offer them that in order to give them a way out. And so that confession, when it happened, was at the end of that run of, wasn't about hurting Michelle. It was about protecting Caden. It was about protecting Caden. It wasn't about hurting Michelle. And you drive that point home, and then you see what the results were. Now, that doesn't happen in every interview, by the way. But this particular interview got to that point where that good choice, bad choice was the tactic to use to get him to open up finally and confess the whole thing. I knew, of course, I'm sitting in the room. I'm right there looking at him. He looked at me, and the minute he took those glasses off, I went, man, here it comes. This was, and so when you're sitting there in the moment, it is really tough to maintain that control. I mean, for me, because I know it's coming. I know this is the money shot right here. And takes him off. And then he went into surrender. He went into a kind of a mild surrender, and then the praying thing, he's trying to get himself under control because he knows what he's about to say. He's about to let this thing loose. And then he kind of looks off, then he comes back, I grabbed her and I broke her neck. And then he goes on to describe, you saw the demonstration, because you always, at the end of an interview, successful interview, you're going to go through, you're going to kind of sum it up, and then you want them to demonstrate what they did. So that was the purpose of having my partner come in, getting on the table, and having Mark demonstrate what he did. Now, at some point in time, he had told, he may have said in that clip, that he believed that he choked her for something like 2.5 to 3 minutes. And let me tell you something. Just put yourself in a position of choking and time it for 2.5, 3 minutes. That is an incredibly long period of time to be doing that. And in fact, in the courtroom, the prosecutor did just that. She said, she stood in front of the jury. She says, we're going to stop and we're going to hold for 2.5 minutes. And that's all we're going to do. And this is how long he says he choked her. And I'm telling you what, it was like an eternity. Unbelievable. Which gives the jury the idea of the rage that he felt when he killed her. Now, the defense attorney was going to present that this was an act of passion and so forth and so on. Now, the jury came, and so the jury verdict was a mixed bag. Of course, the prosecution was asking for life, but I will say this in the punishment phase that the jury came back and they found him guilty of murder, no passion. So that was a good thing. So he's looking at 5 to 99 years or a life sentence where he would have to do 30 years before he's eligible for parole. Prosecution was asking for life. The defense was trying to play on, kind of a, I didn't mean to do it kind of a thing, or it was a passion thing. They still tried to go with that in the punishment. And they had the family come up and testify. And Walter, the father, who I became kind of close with, I have 2 daughters. There were some things that happened afterwards, trying to get her body back to Houston he buried her in Midland. He buried her in an oil field in Midland, which is an adjoining community to Odessa. And what we have to remember here is, even after the confession, we've got to have the body, because we have no other evidence other than his confession. And we'd already talked about this with the DA, that we don't get the body back. It's going to be, we can charge him, but it's going to be a difficult prosecution. So when he said, I'll take you to the body, we called in Midland County Sheriff's Office. Great folks. The sheriff there was a Marine. He and I connected very quickly. In fact, he just passed away. Great man. And then we called on our friends at the FBI. So I contacted the agent that we work with all the time in Houston, and he brought the evidence recovery team out of San Antonio. And they swooped in because her car, he had packed her up he had murdered her, put her in the closet, took the little boy to Odessa, which was an 8-hour drive. Then he did whatever he did there, and then he turned around and drove 8 hours back and put her body in a big plastic container. And because rigor mortis start to set in, when he was putting her in the container, her arms kept popping up out of the container. So he had to shove her down, and he was tired, and he told me he was tired of looking at her. So he put a plastic bag over her head and stuffed her in the container, duct taped the container. Then he drug it down the staircase to the parking lot. He tried to put her in the trunk of her car, but he's such a freaking wuss that he couldn't get her in there. And then he complained later on one of the phone calls that he made that she had gained weight, so he couldn't get her into the trunk. God. So then he got her around to the rear passenger seat, opened the door, and he kind of, picked her up at one point, lifted her up, picked her up, got her in the back seat, drove to Odessa with her in the back seat, parked her car in his parents' driveway, and left it there for a day and a half with her in the back seat. Then he tells me that he had to start smoking cigars in the car. And he knew he had to get rid of her, dispose of the body. Well, the reason why he's doing that, if anybody's been around a decomposing body on a homicide scene, one of the ways you get that very unforgettable aroma is to smoke a cigar. So that's what he's telling me. And so he takes her over to an oil field in Midland, the adjoining community, and he buries her. And the container and the whole bit, and then disposes of the container. Buries her and disposes of the container. So we get Midland County Sheriff's Office. They get all their guys out there, and FBI comes up, and we are on FaceTime with the FBI and the investigator, the sheriff's office out there, while they're searching. And he's drawn us a map, and he has pinpointed where her body is on the map. And then as they're walking across, there's I forget what, a light pole or a telephone pole or something there. And he goes, she should be right around there. And then the thing that I remember distinctly, because my partner was handling that part of it, I was over, I think I was talking to the producers of the Dr. Phil show, as a matter of fact. So, because he called them in the room. He wanted to call everybody. So he calls the producer of Dr. Phil, says, you know, I just confessed, and where are you? And, but I remember the FBI agent saying, I can't remember her name, sharp gal, we found her. So they processed the scene, took pictures, so forth and so on, recovered the body, and then they went to her car and brought it in and processed the car for us. So FBI guy, I can't say enough about, and I use those guys, you know, all the time. I mean, I had them do stuff in Louisiana for me. I mean, it just wherever those recovery teams are positioned throughout the country, throughout the state, we've utilized them. Just great resources. And so the Gary Painter was the Sheriff Painter, and he passed away, I think earlier this year or maybe last year, but just a great guy. And he was, we were having some problems getting her body back. And the problem was at our end, the Harris County Medical Examiner. And I got in his face. He was the deputy chief medical examiner. He was, you know, giving me all these administrative bullcrap reasons and things they were going to have to do. And I said, she's coming back. And Sheriff Painter said, I'll send her with a police escort. You know, we'll get her there. So, and Walter had called me, the father. I talked to him probably 3 times in this process, and the medical examiners it was just terrible. But we finally got her home. And getting back to the trial, now, Walter is a fine Christian man. And in the punishment phase of that trial, he showed that, and he showed grace and forgiveness toward Mark. And I think that had a profound effect on the jury. Because the jury came back and sentenced him to 27 years. And everybody just about fell out. Now, he'll have to do half of that. I think he comes up for parole probably in 2026 or 2027, somewhere around there. But that doesn't mean he's going to get it.
Someone
But
asked if do you plan to go to that parole hearing? Do you ever do that?
I have not, only unless I'm asked to. If the family asks me to come, I will go. But I won't take it upon myself to go there.
I mean,
But
it seems like he got off easy. Ned Smith agreed.
well, he did. He did. It was. I was astonished. But I don't know what went on in that jury room, but I think that was the compromise. I think there was a compromise there. Now here's, and I don't know this, but I do know that at that point in time, Caden, I think, had turned 5, the little boy. And he would be eligible for parole at 13 and a half years. Well, Caden would be 18. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that was just my takeaway, that this was a compromise of some kind for the sake of the son, of the boy. So, and I don't know that, I'm just speculating, but everybody was astonished, I can tell you that. And one of the unusual things was in this case was I had called Dr. Fil. I knew he'd gone to the interview. And so I called Dr. Fil to try to get a conference with him. And of course, I'm still waiting for that phone call. But Dr.
Fil did not respond to a request from the detective.
No.
What's the matter with you, Dr. Fil?
So when we got the confession, I did what I said I would do. I told David, the brother, and David was, we had to calm the family down a little bit at the beginning of this thing, because they were putting some things out there in the local media. And we were just concerned that it was going to scare Castellano off. So they weren't happy with us, but they complied. And I told David, I said, here's what I will do. When we find Michelle, you will be the first one I call. So once we got the confession, once we got her located, I called David. When I called David, they had just landed in LA to go do the Dr. Fil show. I gave him the news. We got off the phone. Then I get a phone call from the producer of the Dr. Fil show. And she wants to know, what do we do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do we do? I said, well, do we continue on with the show? She's asking me. And I said, well, I'm sure this has happened before, right? No, this has never happened before. And I said, well, then I would suggest that you talk to David. It was David, his mother, and I think his fiance, and see what they want to do. And if they want to go ahead and go through with the show, with the interview, then by golly, do it. But now obviously the course of that interview has changed dramatically. But so there were a lot of nuances in this investigation, and then it was later in the next week that they actually showed the show. And now what was funny, that I think we did the press conference on Tuesday, I believe. He confessed on Sunday. We actually flew to Midland in a DEA airplane, or DPS, and we're there for the processing of the car. We ran a search warrant. We did some things, and on his parents' house and so forth and so on. Recovered a bunch of stuff from that area, and So I think we held the press conference. Now we've been up forever. I mean, flying back and forth and all this stuff. So Tuesday we have the press conference, and many times in these press conferences, the question is asked, and it happened in this one, is why do people confess? And my response was, well, I don't know. We'd like to think that's because of our good looks and our charm, but we know that's not the case. But all I can tell you is in this case that he confessed to Detective Fil, not to Dr. Fil. So, of course, that's the line that, when you do these sound bites, they always want the line, right? To put. So that was the line. And
that's a mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Right there.
So, but just, it was just, and I learned a lot from this case from a lot of different aspects. So, yeah.
Kudos to you, Fil. Amazing to watch you in action. I'm always slow. I don't know why it took me about 2 years to think of this, but finally did it. Look at this. Joel would enjoy seeing more of this kind of podcast with Fil and Scott. Maybe Scott can show one with him being with the FBI. Scott, you gonna make us beg for this or what? Can we get one of yours, or they're impossible?
No, nothing's impossible, but I enjoy watching Fil's. I do have a question, if I can, Fil.
Yeah.
And I know things are a little bit different. States, prosecutors,
Right.
some more. At what point after he confesses do you Mirandize him?
I never Mirandized him. There was no need to Mirandize him. The interview was finished. We were done. Now he goes before the judge in an arraignment, and the judge at that time Mirandizes him. But there was no need for me ever in the process. What I did was we waited until we had all the information we needed. He was still, up until the time that he's arrested, he could have gotten up and walked out of there. So we got through the whole process. We got the body recovered. And at that point in time, I called the DA and I said, we've got the body. We've got the confession. She said, you've got the charge. And I walked in, and I'll never forget this. I walked in there at 6:00 p.m. straight up. And I said, Mark, you're now under arrest for the murder of Michelle Warner.
Well, everyone wants to know, Fil, who raised the boy and how he's doing, if you know.
I don't want to be lying, but I believe that Walter and his ex-wife, Michelle's mother, I believe they're the ones that have custody of Kate.
By the way, would obviously love to see Scott, but Scott is a retired federal agent, and those interviews aren't exactly they're not quite as transparent, the federal government. So if Scott can get us something, I'd love to do it. If not, but we'll definitely do this again with Fil. I got to run.
Well, let me ask Scott a question, because
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, Scott. The feds, you guys, you didn't video interviews until recently, right? I mean, I don't remember ever, when running with the FBI guys that we ran with, them conducting. If we were going to go conduct an interview at a federal facility, we had to bring our own recording equipment.
Yeah, so I believe it was 2013 they started the pilot, and then I think in about 14, 15.
Yeah.
So it is relatively recent where they started recording with putting together these, permission cycles and so forth. But many of my interviews are done with local law enforcement partners, as many of the cases that I worked could be federal state charges. So this and that case, we used our local
Yeah. Right.
departments, and their policies were, especially in Delaware, for quite a long time to record.
Well, if they're closed cases, that's open record anyway. So you shouldn't worry about anybody wanting to take any action against you.
There you go. I want to mention one thing before we head out. We did this story a long time ago, and then we actually offline, Phil, Scott, and myself spoke with the mother, but there was an arrest made in the case of Mercedes Vega. She was an exotic dancer in the Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona area. Horrific crime. She was found. Close your ears if you don't want to hear this. She was found burned in a car with bleach down her throat. Scott Duffy, the mom, was broken when we spoke to her. You told her, and she was very, very skeptical of police work. And you told her, and Phil told her on that call, these guys are working as hard as they can. And ultimately, there was an arrest in this case. I'm looking for the perp's name here, which I will find. But they made an arrest. The guy is a 22-year-old gangbanger, known gangbanger. Just your thoughts on that, knowing that this mother, it looks like, will get some justice for her daughter who was killed in this really, really brutal fashion.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to law enforcement. So yet another, and Phil and I have done this enough where we can understand the pain, the anguish, the doubt, etc., from a victim's family member, especially in this case, mother, and knowing, without talking to law enforcement, that we just had that instinct that police were working this, and this was not something pushed aside. First of all, the severity of the type of crime, but that law enforcement also felt that they needed to keep the mother and family at a distance. And you could weigh in positive negatives for that. Ultimately, I just believe that if we had more resources, every department would hire individuals that don't have a whole lot of knowledge of a case, but are at least keeping the family separated enough from the investigator to allow the investigators to do their job. It is a very fine line of providing enough information, but we don't know what law enforcement knew at that time, but they might have had reason to hey, we don't want to give her anything that could be used against us in finding our culprit, because with social media and with the fact that she might be going out and talking to the media, law enforcement didn't want to give her anything that would otherwise jeopardize their case. I'm just assuming in that aspect, but I felt comfortable that they're hitting this hard, but this is not something that could be solved overnight.
Yeah. By the way, you see it. Oh, I had it up a moment ago, but the person arrested in this case, 22-year-old Sincere Hayes, spelled S-E-N, like sincere, but Sincere Hayes. Again, a known gang member. Police, the investigation's ongoing. They didn't say, why they arrested him specifically, but they believe they have their man. I think the mother thought there were multiple perps here. So, the investigation is probably still very, very active. But someone asking if the woman is a snitch. Who knows? No one deserves to die that way. Today was really incredible. Got to see Phil work his magic. Phil, your final thoughts before we say goodbye.
Well, I just, I watching this again, it kind of, it brought me right back to that moment. So from that aspect, I appreciate you doing this, Joel. This was this is a case I will never forget from a lot of different perspectives and reasons. And thank you, Scott, for your kind words. It always it means a lot to me as a professional when I have someone of Scott's caliber give that kind of a critique. And I would have expected him, if that he saw something that I did that was just, goofy, he would have pointed that out as well. But I do appreciate it. And when I'm up there in April with a little expanded version on my interviewing, although it's going to be very consolidated, I'm trying to figure out how I get 3 days of training into 4 hours. But and you'll probably see parts of this again, specific to the good choice, bad choice aspects. But so I appreciate that, and certainly appreciate all the commentary, and I just, in watching those things, I try to learn. I always go back and look at them again. So when I'm watching this again, I'm thinking to myself, I might have been able to rephrase something a little differently, but you can always fine tune these things as you go along. But I will say that when we do commentary on other interviews, and we make our constructive criticisms, or we say this is the way we would do things, we're not saying it to be just negative toward the detectives that are in the room. That has nothing to do with it. And I know people have commented that we don't know the case and this and that. And we're not, when we are in those modes of we're critiquing these interviews, we're not in there talking about the investigation. We're talking about what's happening in that interview room. And Scott's already spoken to this before, which is, this is what we're doing. So this is the perspective with which I make my criticisms, or I say this is the way I would do things. It's not to criticize other detectives. It's just saying this is the way I would do it. And I only say it because I teach this, and it has been successful. And the people that, there's a lot of good interview schools out there. I've been to 3 or 4 of them. And Reed, Rhodes, I've been to several of them. And I've taken all of those things, the components, talking about, and look, body language is body language. Eye movement is eye movement. Verbal behavior, nonverbal behavior, it's all the same stuff. The thing that makes it unique about the way I teach is I put more of the person part of it into the mix, where it's just not some sort of a mechanical, this is how you do it. You just do A, B, and C, and you're going to get this, and so forth and so on. So, again, I appreciate you putting this up, Joel. It was interesting for me to look at it again, and again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm hoping, Scott, that we'll be able to put you up here on the hot seat at some point. Put you in the interview room.
Just want to make sure Scott doesn't get arrested. But look at this. Phil and Scott don't know. We're really building our brand here. STS Singles. Now they want a calendar which will feature Phil as Mr. November, Scott as Mr. December. All that coming to the channel soon. But also the COE is working behind the scenes with Phil and maybe Scott. But Scott, again, it's very hard for Scott to get or give us permission to use stuff. But COE is working on something behind the scenes. You just heard Phil say he's going to be presenting at Scott's. Scott has a conference at the University of Wilmington, and COE is going to work with Phil to do something like a master class type thing with Fil Waters. Let us know if you'd be interested in that. survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. And look at this. People are getting serious about the calendar here. Has SGS considered a best guest calendar release? We really should. We really should. I have to vote. I mean, Phil and Scott are obviously shoo-ins, and this was the best line of the day here. Detective Fil and not Dr. Phil. Look at Ned Smith. Stop. Relax over there. Pete Tragos, the lawyer, he's May, June, and July. Relax, Ned. Relax. Free Fred. Fred is free. He's a pain in my ass.
Well, he could be on one of the months. Fred.
Yeah, Fred should be on for sure. Yeah.
Hey, let me say something real quick about the case we were just talking about. The lady in
Arizona.
In Arizona,
Mercedes Vega.
Yeah, I am so relieved and happy for that mother and that family. That at least they've got this person in custody. They've got the right person, and that there'll be a sense of justice here and bring some peace for that family. And because I remember when Scott and I spoke with her, and Joel, she was very, very cynical, cynical.
Yes.
And I don't know if she was comforted somewhat, but we had a long discussion with her, and we've kept her in our prayers and that family. So I'm just glad to see we've got the answer to prayers here, and I'm sure she's finally been able to exhale a little bit.
Well, this was an amazing show because of Phil and Scott, and obviously getting to watch Phil. We'll definitely do it again, but like I said, the COE is working with Phil behind the scenes to bring us a master class. And by the way, I think it's fascinating because it's all the skills that Phil uses in an interview room are real life skills, starting with listening, the compassion, all these things. So a lot to learn from that. I hope you learned today. The Menendez brothers are in court next week. It is Thanksgiving. I think we're going to do a Thanksgiving show. There's a lot going on.
I hope this new DA shoves them back into the pit from which they came. That'll get them started.
Yeah, and your Marine friend in New York City is on trial right now for that chokehold. And I think we're going to jump on.
He never should have been charged.
Yeah,
I hope he gets a full acquittal.
Yeah, and by the way, this is the fastest 120 minutes of your life. It flies by. Please, if you like the show, subscribe. If you hate it, subscribe 3 times or unsubscribe 3 times, or so, I don't know what it is. And hit that like button. Please just share the show with friends. Get the word out there. The content is too good to be missed, not because of me, but because of these guys. I will see you all next week. Phil and Scott, thank you. Love you, America. Love you, the Commonwealth of PA, the Big Island of Hawaii, Maui, and, of course, Houston, Texas. We will see you next week.